Boyd, did you have anything specific you were looking for from Chicago?
No, I mean, without a trailer and a boatload of money, it's last time I was out there, I found a lot of things, but it's hard to take stuff back on the plane. I said, man, maybe one day I'll just drive out there or go by train. Just, but just trying to bring it back to California, it's a long ways.
All right,
Uh,
let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to O-Scale Central Online. This is a monthly program sponsored by O-Scale Central. This is the March 16, 2025 edition. I'm David Vaughn. For those of you who are new to the program, we are sponsored by O-Scale Central, which promotes two-rail O-Scale and supports modelers in the scale. O-Scale Central is a nonprofit 501c3 membership organization. Information about O-Scale Central, including what we do and how to join, is available through our website at oscalecentral.com. We present this program to you as a service to the O-Scale two-rail community. You do not have to be an O-Scale Central member to participate, but if you like the program and love the scale, please consider joining us. If you are presently an O-Scale member, as about 240 O-Scale two-railers are, it is membership renewal time. And if you have not yet renewed, or if you're not sure what your status is, please check in. You can email Joe Barker, our membership director, if you're not sure, but when in doubt, renew. Joe is on the call and we'll be talking to him later on. So I hope that if you are a member, you'll re-up, and if you're new to the program, we hope that you will be favorably impressed, and one of the things you'll do in consequence is to join O-Scale Central. Today's program has several neat segments. The first is going to be a description of upcoming O-Scale shows, lots of news, particularly regarding Chicago's March meet. Second, Tom Farrell will be our first guest. Tom is a prize-winning modeler, the host of New Tracks Modeling, and a leader in the narrow gauge community. He will walk us through a clinic about narrow gauge modeling and how you might integrate it into your layout, and we'll be able to answer questions. And third, but by no means least, Boyd Reyes is an enthusiastic convert to O-Scale two-rail and a semi-retired professional painter of brass models. He's going to talk to us about his techniques, thoughts, and confessions about the business of painting brass models. For those of you who may want to come back to this program or to prior programs, the programs are edited and then posted on YouTube and accessible either through YouTube or through the O-Scale Central website. I've had a couple of questions regarding February's program, and due to a little technical hiccup, it has not yet been posted on YouTube, but it has now been sent for editing and posting, so look for it. Talking about upcoming events, Chicago's March meet, which is actually held, as you know, at the Westin Hotel in Lombard, Illinois, is less than a week away. Brad Kowal and his committee have been great stewards of the long March meet tradition. They've started with a very lean program, and every year they add more features to the show. The show is going to be on Saturday and Sunday, March 22nd and 23rd. And in addition to offering a gathering place for 1,000 O-scalers and about 350 tables. There are going to be a number of clinics and other events. As to the clinics, our own Greg Vigiano, who presented a great clinic on this program on 3D printed trees, will be taking his program to Chicago. Kerry Williams, I think I mentioned before we formally convened, is going to do a history of O-scale, concentrating on the early days. Kerry has a great collection of early O-scale and an encyclopedic knowledge. George Bogatiuk, I always mispronounce his name, is going to do a presentation on Soundtrack's Blunami. I will be doing a clinic on modeling the nickel plate in O-scale. There will be a clinic on using public land records and surveys to get research data for your model railroad. And Ken Burney will be doing a clinic on painting hydrocal masonry. There is a really neat modeling contest. O-scale is a modeler scale, as we all know that. And our own Eric Peterson coordinates that program and has trained and oversees the judges. It will be on Saturday. The morning will be from 9 to 11 to submit your models. It'll be open for viewing from 11 to 1, and then there will be judging and announcements at the end. On Saturday evening, also a tradition in recent March meets, will be what they euphemistically call in the Midwest a social evening, which means that we all get together, drink adult beverages, and tell lies about how good our modeling is and how we're about to spring for the next big purchase. So don't miss that. The show is also open on Sunday. It's open at 9 on Saturday and at 8:30 on Sunday. It closes at 5 on Saturday and at 2:30 on Sunday. This is like going to Mecca, but you don't have to bend down as much. This is something, if you haven't been, you really need to go. If you have not been able to get there yet, there's always this year, next year, but see if you can make it this year. It is well worth the program, and the shows are on at least through 2026. Next year's show is going to be March 19th through the 22nd. So March meet, don't miss it. Also coming up is our O-scale West show. This has been for many years a complement to the Chicago show. It's been continuous except for the COVID years from 1991. And the guy who is in charge of that is our own Rod Miller. And Rod, I can do a little bullet points on this, or since you're here, if you want to tell us what's going to go on at O-scale West and when, I would appreciate it if you could do that.
Dave, first of all, wave if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
All right, good, thank you. Okay, well, O-scale West is on again this year. Our typical weekend is Memorial Day weekend, which is sort of an odd time in a lot of people's minds, but that's when in Silicon Valley prices are sky high, and that weekend we can get good space for a good price, and the hotel rooms are also well priced. The O-scale West, as David pointed out, is the original West Coast O-scale meet, started 33 years ago, and I'm happy to have resumed the chairmanship of it after a hiatus of about 5 years. during which time there was little or no promotion of the event, and it shrank. And so my goal is to resurrect the event back to what it used to be. And I'm optimistic that we're going to get there. The meet is held at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Santa Clara, California. That's about well, it's just north of San Jose is the easiest way to look at it. San Francisco Bay Area. Easy access via San Francisco Airport or San Jose Airport, or if you take the train, you can actually get off a Capital Limited train and walk to the hotel. And if you do that, you have to, if you from a transcontinental train, you need to change in either San Jose or Sacramento to get on the Capital Limited trains. We have a website, oscalewest.com. You can find out more about the meet. You register online there, rent tables there if you wish, and eventually we will be providing more information about the home layouts that are open for visiting. Right now we have 2 clinics scheduled. One is by a man named Alan Lazo, who went into the business of building turnouts for S-scale, and now he builds turnouts for all scales, and he wants to give a clinic on building turnouts. And then I will give a clinic on lifetime layout construction. That's my home layout, which is in Palo Alto, California, and will be open for visiting. It's now 33 years old, and it still runs as reliably as it did on day one. And I would like to talk about some of the ways that I built the layout to achieve that. And I think that's probably enough for me. So if you get
Terrific.
questions, ask away.
This is May 23 through 25 at the Hyatt Regency in Santa Clara. It's a great
Absolutely.
facility, and I think O-Scale West is coming back, and we're glad to see it. It's and we need to increase our presence on the West Coast. I think Rod is doing a great job at doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
A couple of other flags. Number one, the next Strasbourg show is April 12. And I want to get on people's radar the Cleveland show, which is going to be November 1 and 2. Skylar Shippey has taken over that show. And one of the things that he's going to do is there will be a modular meet. So you can bring your modular sections, and we're going to try and put them all together and make it a complete modular layout. And the website to be looking at this and getting it on your radar is clevelandoscaleshow.com. Pretty self-explanatory. And if you would go ahead and look at that and consider going, that would be terrific. It's going to be a great show. I want to flag just a couple of other things. Number one, O-Scale Central communicates with our members through a quarterly journal and a monthly newsletter and through these programs. We got behind for a period for both the journal and the drawbar. We apologize for that, but I'm happy to report that we are now caught up with publications, thanks mostly to the good efforts of our coupler editor, Bob Jellin, and the drawbar editor, Eric Peterson. I really want to thank them for their efforts. It is important to maintain our communications, and I'm delighted to say that that we are now back on schedule. I also want to recognize Scott Kurzowski, who's been appointed to O-Scale Central's board of directors. Scott has been our website guru. We've seen steady upgrades in the quality and scope of the website, and I really want to thank Scott for his efforts. We've got a couple of coming events, non-train shows. One is that O-Scale Central has, O-Scale Trains has gone from a bi-monthly publication to an annual. It's published by White River Productions, and I can report that White River just closed its editorial deadline for the annual, and the 2025 issue is headed for press. This promises to be an interesting and informative issue. I received proofs back on an article I wrote on CAD design and 3D printing in O-Scale, and it was numbered at page 82. So it's going to be a thick and meaty publication. If you want the annual to continue, please support it. You can pick up a copy through through White River Publications website. And I suspect that we will be broadcasting other ways to get a hold of a copy. But again, if you want it to continue, we need to support it. Jim Kello is the I hesitate to say retired because I don't think he's capable of retirement, but he's the founder of Nutrax Modeling, and he has a new project. Jim always has a new project, and I promised him just a couple of minutes to tell the group about it. So, Jim?
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate. Can you hear me, David?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for the time. Guys, you know, we started Nutrax with articles in O-Scale Resource Magazine a little bit over 8 years ago. And the Zoom shows now have been on for about a little bit over 5. Last year, or a little bit over a year ago, maybe 13 months ago, so we started a newsletter with Martin Breckbilt, MMR, as our editor. Starting the 1st of June, we're going to convert that into a full-fledged magazine. And we're really happy about this. What it's going to mean for O-Scale is, I think, very significant. And it's primarily thanks to the leadership of your organization, David. What we have done, we have 4 sponsors for the magazine. I've told each sponsor that they get a full page ad in the magazine every month. And they can change it each month if they want to. They can have whatever they want to say in it. It'll be their page each month. Your organization, O-Scale Central, is one of the 4 organizations that will have that capability. And David, you and the board, I appreciate your support in this. So what does this mean for the members? Well, it means this. If you're a small O-Scale manufacturer and you're not an advertiser, a paid advertiser right now in any of the magazines, because we don't want to take any revenue away from anybody. But if you're one of the many small manufacturers that I talk to all the time that can't afford advertising, you can advertise in our new magazine for free. All you have to do is give me a call. Let me know what you want to do, and we'll make sure that your ad gets in our magazine for free. The size of it and all of that, those details we're working out right now with Martin, and we'll announce those in the upcoming newsletter, because the first issue of our magazine will be June the 1st. If you're an O-Scale modeler, model builder, and you're interested in improving your skills, learning new skills, seeing what others do, if you want to be a mentor and help other modelers, then this is the magazine we believe for you. This magazine is not just for O-Scale. It's going to cover all the scales because Nutrax Modeling covers all the scales. But what we believe this is going to allow is an interaction among model builders in all of those scales to help each other. So if you're interested in model building, we hope that you'll participate in this. And frankly, this is one of the benefits I think that you get for being a member of this organization, because anybody that is a member of the O-Scale Central, since O-Scale Central is one of our 4 sponsors, ought to be able to get their ad in here with no problem. And David, I hope your organization will actively promote this among your the small manufacturers, particularly the guys that do 3D printing and the new technologies that are coming out now that I believe may be the future of our hobby. We hope that they'll take advantage of this opportunity. So Dave,
How do they get in touch with you?
you have my email. It's Jim Kello at newtracksmodeling.com. NEWTRACKS modeling, MODELING.com. Jim Kello at newtracksmodeling.com. And I will say this too, our second new program, and David is one of these new award winners. We're starting a program that we call New Tracks Mentor. And this is a person who I've either interviewed and profiled in one of my articles over the last 8 or 9 years. It's one of the people that have been on the Zoom show for the last 5 years or sometime, and the one that Tom will be interviewing in the future shows. Or it's one of the people that is going to write a feature article in our new magazine. Right now, we have 512 people who have qualified for this award, and David Vaughn is one of those people. And what we're saying is we hope that you'll actively support this, because we think mentoring, particularly in O scale, when we're trying to attract so many people, possibly from smaller scales into O scale, being a mentor and showing that you're a mentor, we think that could be extremely important for our scale. So we hope that you're interested in that. Again, you have my email if you want to participate, and you'll find out about this in our April newsletter, because all the details and a list of all 512 people will be in that newsletter.
Super.
We hope you'll participate.
Thank you, Jim. And people ask, why should O Scale Central be working with a multi-scale organization? Shouldn't we concentrate just on O Scale? And the answer is, I look at all these folks from the multi-scale address list that Jim uses, and I see converts everywhere I look. I see converts to 2-rail O scale, and want to expose ourselves to as many of them as possible. Thank you, Jim. Good luck with the new venture. We appreciate your support, and we're happy to support you.
Thank you, David.
All right, our first featured guest is Tom Farrell. He is, as indicated, a prize-winning modeler focusing on narrow gauge. He is also Jim Kello's successor as the host of New Tracks Modeling, and he is going to tell us the inside story on narrow gauge modeling and how to get into it, how to integrate it with your own present layout, and sort of what's out there. And I'm really honored to have Tom, and take it away, Tom.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me this evening. And yeah, I'm going to give you a little overview of the history of O scale. That'll be very brief since I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys are all O scalers. And then I'm going to focus on ON30 and how that has become, like David is always saying, O scale is a modeler scale. Well, we're part of that group, and I just want to show you some of the work that people are doing today in ON30 and some work that I've done. So I'll just jump right in. Let me share my screen here.
Wait.
Assume everybody can see that.
Yes.
Okay. So, of course, it's going to freeze. Hold on one second. There we go. Oh, jeez. Hold on one moment. Sorry. I do this every Wednesday. It's just like it. This is supposed to happen to me. Christ. Okay, that's working now. All right, so everybody's familiar with O scale, 1 inch equals 48 inches. I personally started in N scale back in 1967. You guys all seeing this? Yeah?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And I modeled N scale from 1967 to 2005 when I switched to O. And I got into ON30 quite by accident. I really like to scratch build, and N scale was very difficult to do that in. So I actually went online to a company, maybe Broadway Limited Imports, and I was going to order a couple HO locomotives. I placed my order. I was told immediately they were on back order. I canceled my order and I looked on their site, and they had a narrow gauge locomotive on there. And I said, oh, an ON30 narrow gauge. I said, well, let me try that. And that's how I got into ON30, quite by accident. Just briefly, this presentation was made for New Tracks, where everybody may or may not be familiar with the history of O-scale, so I'll be very brief here. But standard O gauge was introduced by Märklin. That's how you pronounce it. I speak German. Back in 1895, 1901 in Germany. They're actually not clear when they came out with their first locomotives. And Lionel adopted it back in 1906, making a very popular scale. The golden age of O-scale modeling, you could say, was in the 20s and 40s. It became the primary model railroading scale led by Lionel. They shifted from tin plate to cast metal for more realism. World War II, they took a pause. But it became the dominant scale at this time, especially for children. It was pretty robust equipment. Post-war, it remained popular, but started competing with HO scale, which was introduced. HO scale, roughly, half O is what HO stands for, but it didn't quite have the detail that you can get on O scale, but it was adequate. And it had a period where it transitioned from toys to more realistic hobby grade models at that time. And Lionel at that time pretty much started to cater to adult hobbyists. And then you could say the Renaissance period with O scale was 1970 to 2000. There was a renewed interest in O gauge as a collector's item. I mean, Lionel, some of their stuff today, the electronics package on there, capable of going to Mars. I mean, it's just amazing what Lionel is doing these days. I know you guys principally aren't Lionel, you're two rail O scale, but nevertheless, Lionel is still a major player. ON30 was introduced by Bachmann in 1998, and that was the turning point for ON30. That's what started to get it really popular. We're going to go into that in a moment. And like David Vaughn is always saying, and that's the reason I am so pleased I switched from N to O, is the scratch building and the ability to detail not only locomotives, rolling stock, but structures. So the modern period, we can say, is 2000 onward. And at New Tracks, and probably you guys, we classify things as 3 rail or high rail, and then O scale 2 rail. The only reason I point this out is standard O scale 2 rail, because of its Lionel heritage, is 1.25 inches between the outside rails, which scales to 5 feet. And the only reason I point that out is people take shots at ON30 because it's not necessarily a lot of prototypical railroading. Well, neither is O gauge. I mean, you're off a little unless you go to Proto 48. And as Model Railroading was fond of saying, the magazine for years and years, model railroading is fun. So we shouldn't get too wrapped around the axle with some of this stuff. Common narrow gauge O scale is divided into ON3, ON30, and ON18.
Wow.
Pardon? Okay. ON30 gauge refers to O scale trains that basically operate on HO gauge track, which is 0.625 inches. It scales out to 2 foot 6 inches or 30 inches in O scale. And that's where they get the ON30. Technically, if Bachmann would have behaved themselves, they would have called it ON 2 1/2. That would be in the same language as the ON, which measures 3/4 of an inch between the rails and scales out to 3 foot or 36 inches between the rails. So, and the other thing I'm going to mention isn't something that's really getting popular now is ON18, which is, here we go again, this runs on N gauge track, which is 9 millimeters between the rails, and scales out to 1.6 in O scale. So why did Bachmann come out with ON30 and not come out with ON3 locomotives? They wanted to use their HO scale track. They wanted to push that track and make it easy. There were some ON30 modelers back in the 50s. It gained a little popularity in the 60s and 70s. A fellow named Gordon North. An early ON30 layout was the Venango Valley, which was in the June 71 RMC magazine. There aren't a lot of 2'6" gauge railways in the US. ON30 remained a niche modeling area compared to ON2, which we really didn't talk about, and which is 2-foot gauge, and ON3. But everything changed in 1998 when Bachmann introduced an affordable 260 steam locomotive for what they call their Christmas Village market. And their success led a lot of other manufacturers into the market. And at one time, ON30 was the fastest growing segment in model railroading. That mogul, I don't know the production numbers, but I've got the marketing manager of Bachmann scheduled for New Tracks Modeling this coming Wednesday as one of our guest speakers. And I'm going to ask him, but I'm guessing it's in the tens of this mogul. And although it doesn't have, we'll show you a picture of it, although it's not great on external detail, it's virtually indestructible. It just runs and runs and runs. This is the fella who, a guy named Lee Riley, who introduced the ON30 mogul and dreamed up this whole concept of narrow gauge O scale in a serious vein beyond the beyond the 260 mogul. I'm not going to read his resume here, but basically this guy is like a who's who of model railroading. And he passed away back in 2016. Now, one of the issues with ON30 and Bachmann is that product champion of Bachmann, and he drove this through the organization. And he introduced locomotive after locomotive after rolling stock. And he really was, like I say, the product champion, and he really drove this, through the industry to become a very popular gauge within the O scale market. Another driver of ON30 was the late Al Judy. He died less than a year ago. I consider Al Judy as the John Allen of ON30. I did a program on him for O Scale Central, and I did one for New Tracks, and I'm personally trying to keep his legacy alive. I run the ON30 Railroading Facebook page that he started. We now have over 8,000 members on that page, and it's growing. When I took it over in August after his passing, we had roughly 7,200 members, and we've grown it another 800. So it's still an active live scale ON30, despite Bachmann sort of backing out a little bit, not introducing locomotives at the breakneck speed they did under Lee. These are, so this is why ON30 is so popular. It became popular. It gives you the advantages of modeling structures, for example, in O scale, where you can achieve a lot of detail. And it runs on HO track. You'll see that we don't really use HO track anymore, but you can use more or less the same radius that you do on HO scale. So The concept is with ON30 is the best of both worlds, kind of like an S scale, only it's typically less expensive to participate in ON30 as S scale. The idea is that you can do O scale modeling in an HO scale space. And that's what I've done twice now in my rustic buff and old Gothic railroad. It's really is a nice happy medium. So if you like O scale, this is one alternative for you. When you can incorporate a ON30 narrow gauge within your O scale layout if you like. So like I say, it is the same gauge as HO, which is the width between the track. But we don't really use HO scale track anymore, not many of us anyway. There's Pico, which is in the middle there, and microengineering is the other. Now the microengineering track looks more prototypical, but the ON30 Pico track is very durable and very stout. My first rustic buff and old Gothic railroad was 15 years in the making and 1 year or one afternoon to take out. My new and it featured both Pico and microengineering track. My new rustic buff and old Gothic features exclusively Pico track. I just like the durability, and if you paint it up, it doesn't look too bad. This is an typical HO tank car just for scale. See, it's approximately 6 inches long. This isn't exactly one of the stellar products from ON30, but I pulled it out. It's just a little bit longer than an HO tank car, but nearly at 7 inches. And this is an ON3 brass tank car that I have. It's 9 inches. So what you have to understand is if we look at all three, an HO tank car, an ON30 tank car, and an ON3 tank car, the two on the right are both O scale. The ON3 tank car is prototypical. The ON30 is a compromise, but it basically behaves like an HO tank car on the same radius and whatnot. And it's a question of proportions too. If you try to run this brass ON3 tank car that I have is fitted with ON30 trucks. It's a little larger than the ON30 tank car, and it struggles to look right in an ON30 train. The HO tank cars there are just shown for proportion. But I want to demonstrate that we're not running ON30 around Christmas trees anymore. We have a dearth of locomotives, and here was the Mogul that was introduced by Lee. This was the one that was originally meant for running around a Christmas tree, but it got tens of thousands of people into the hobby. You start out with this, you get a youth involved with model railroading, and this is how it became the fastest growing segment within model railroading for a period of time. Bachmann has updated this from the original. It now has metal gears, DCC, and a sound card. And if you spend a little time, you can update the external appearance of this and weather it and whatnot. And it can be a pretty attractive locomotive. And the mechanism is so durable. It is virtually bulletproof. And then Lee started to add for the burgeoning hobbyists, not the children, a bunch of locomotives that are based on prototypes. This is one, this 280. Here's a 240. I mean, these are presentable locomotives. The big difference between ON30 locomotives from Bachmann and the ON3 brass locomotives from other manufacturers is one of these at the time would cost you, let's say, between $150 and $200 max, where a brass locomotive would cost you $500,000, $1,000, or $2,000. So it was a way to get into narrow gauge without breaking the bank. I must have, I don't know, 40 of these locomotives. I do have a HO brass collection. There's absolutely no comparison in the costs between a brass locomotive and a Bachmann locomotive. And they run like, they just run terrific, these Bachmann locomotives. And there's all kinds of variants of them. And if you weather them, I mean, they don't look too bad right out of the box, but when you weather them up, they look really pretty sharp. And they can be found on eBay now, since Bachmann really isn't making all these anymore. They make the Mogul, I guess. But they make all just different variants of them. There's a 440, all different periods, and weathered up. And if you take the time to add some detail to them, they're very presentable models. There's a 460, little porter. Lots of guys love these porters. They'll run on a top of a bucket lid. They'll run a very tight radius. They run these DCC and analog. All these locomotives are DCC. They originally released as analog. 2-truck Hessler. This is a fine looking locomotive. That costs you thousands of dollars in ON3. This 2-truck Climax. Again, if you want to do this type of, if you want to do logging or mining, and you switch to ON30 as opposed to ON3, you'll save yourself about $2,000 a locomotive. Here's the perfect example. If you want to spend that kind of money and get that kind of detail right out of the box, that is available. The model, I don't think they make them right now, but Mountain Model Imports made these prototype locomotives both in ON3 and ON30. They're a couple grand a whack. Broadway Limited, this was the one that started me in ON30. Getting quite pricey now on eBay for some obscure reason, but I have about half a dozen of those, and I have kit bashed them, and they look fantastic. So I mentioned in the very beginning of the program that these aren't your children's trains anymore. There's a lot of fantastic master model builders in ON30 today, and I'm just going to share a few of them with you and then close with my layout. But Al Judy, who was a mentor and a personal friend of mine, I like to refer to him, and I'd like him to be memorialized as the basically the someone that really pushed the ON30 with his Harrisburg show and his numerous articles and as I say, the John Allen of ON30. This is some of his work. These photographs are taken by me at his layout while he was alive. And that's pretty nice detail on that engine house. That's one of his locomotives. Now, remember that photograph I showed you earlier of the out-of-the-box Bachmann? This is what you can do with these locomotives. And that's used as a $150 locomotive. And that'll hold up against any brass locomotive. I mean, look at that thing. It's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And Al Judy was known for his known for a lot of things, but his locomotives were certainly one. This is a scene on Al Judy's layout. The detail is spectacular, and he's painting a scene here. That's just an O scale. I just wanted to show his authenticity. I come from the mining industry, and putting these little boards underneath the bucket is very prototypical. It's interesting he knew to do that. This is kind of neat. Not many people model things like this.
Beautiful.
Yeah, if we could mute. do is we put them on a deadline. And Al was a master at doing this. And gorgeous. Another modeler that you may have never heard of is Len Eberwein. I say he's the finest modeler no one's ever heard of. This guy creates museum quality models. Just briefly, David Vaughn. Len gave me all of his museum quality models about 4 months ago because he wanted his models to wind up in a somebody's hands that would incorporate them in a working model railroad. So we talked briefly about estate planning. His idea was to perpetuate the use of his models with somebody who actually would appreciate them. So he won this. This is a stamping mill that he won a prize in a national model railroading contest, a narrow gauge convention. Look at the detail on this thing. And he's an ON30 modeler. This is a stamping mill, but basically you crush material. Most on this, you'd think it actually worked. This is all scratch built. This is looking inside the stamping mill. This is ON30 modeling. My point today is to show that there are a lot of serious modelers in ON30. We're not just running around Christmas trees anymore. Okay. I want some respect. This is a Len Eberwein model, a 19th century oil distillery. This is all scratch built. Everything you see in brick was carved with balsa foam. The rest is brass wiring. The fittings are all in there. All the valves are in there. This is all scratch built. Everything you see there is scratch built. Look at that. That's an ON30 modeler. This is his coal tipple. It's now having a prominent space on my railroad. This thing is 24 inches high, 18 inches in depth, and 16 inches wide. It's a gorgeous model. ON30 modeler. That's a Bachmann. That's my car there. That's a ON30 ore car, all weathered to hell and back. Close up of an ore car. That's inside the internal. The tipple has interior detail. Here's another shay done by a fellow named Stan Shields. I pulled this off of our ON30 Railroading Facebook page. That's a pretty fair looking locomotive. It's in process there. It's not quite finished in his weathering, but that's $150, $200 locomotive. ON3, that'd be $1,500, $2,000 locomotive. Now, we do have a great modeler who does the whimsical side, Gary Beatty, the Puerto Baracho Railroad. I mean, he is a world-class modeler, but it's all fantasy. So one of the neat things in the very beginning, and I see that Tony Keister's on board. I just want to say what an honor it is to I haven't met him personally, but to have him on the show. But model railroading is fun. And this is the perfect example. This guy is an unbelievable modeler, but it's all fantasy. Yeah. This is my railroad. This is my rustic buff and old Gothic. This is that Pico track. When I first met Jim Kello several years ago, he asked me if that was scratch or that was hand laid track. I said, no, it's just Pico that I've individually painted the ties, the rail spikes, the side of the rails, and ballasted correctly and weathered track. And if you do that, the Pico ON30 track is presentable. That's my opinion. You make your own decision. The depot is scratch built, as is nearly everything on my layout is scratch built. That's one of those moguls there to the left. Remember the toy-like mogul that we showed you earlier? That's what they look like when you weather them and hang a few things on them. I mean, that's a pretty presentable locomotive for nearly nothing, you know? And it runs, it'll never stop running. I think they just run and run and run. That's a scratch-built water tower. That is one of those Broadway Limited C16 locomotives to the right, weathered there. It's another C16 Broadway Limited Imports narrow gauge ON30 locomotive on my rustic buff. Another view of that's looking downtown. Mogul there to the left. I think it looks pretty fair myself. This is the other town in my layout. This is my old layout. 15 years in the making, one afternoon to take it out. There's more of the Pico track, weathered. Scratch build depot in the background. That is one of those Broadway Limited with a whaleback tender on it. And some Wiseman castings all over it. It's been kit bashed. It has sound. Numbered for the year I was born. This is ON30 railroading today. It's another scene from my rustic buff and old Gothic. Again, there's a nice close-up of that Pico track. You know, weathered and ballasted. It comes off just fine. That locomotive is actually not weathered. It's just right out of the box. This is all scratch built. It's a photo in the background. Putting in these trees took about as much time as it did to scratch build this building here. I modeled a limestone quarry. In a former life, I was president and CEO of the world's largest dimensional stone company, the Indiana Limestone Company. We did things like the Pentagon, the Empire State Building, 32 of the 50 state capitals, the Empire State, I think I said that. Anyway, so I had to have a quarry featured in my railroad. And that's what it looks like. It really does look like this. Oh, these big blocks are as big as an SUV, and we put them on wood like that. And that's what a limestone quarry looks like, even today. This is the new rustic buff and old Gothic. This is 2 years old now. The scene is done in the last 6 months. I model Pitts 1930 is the time period, and I have a mixture of Pittsburgh, which is my hometown, the gritty wrong side of the tracks of Pittsburgh, and then southern Indiana. Now, mysteriously, my railroad gets from western Pennsylvania to Indiana without passing through Ohio, because as a Penn Stater, I will not acknowledge that Ohio exists. So, this is my John Allen engine house. I have this right as you walk into the layout room. Anybody that knows model railroading knows probably the most iconic structure in model railroading, and that is the John Allen engine house. So this is my ON30 version of his roughly 1945 HO scratch built engine house. That's my ON30 version, and that's that kit bashed C16 Broadway Limited Imports narrow gauge locomotive. This is the shantytown scene on my new railroad. And this is a Frenchman River Model Works resin kit. Everything else you see there is scratch built. That little skiff is scratch built. That covered bridge is scratch built with its 14,000 shakes on there, put on one at a time with tweezers and super glue. Everything else here is scratch built. There's an overview of Shantytown. You know, in the 1930s, people lost their jobs because of the Great Depression. They lost their homes, and a lot of them, you know, built these, well, that's why they call it shanty towns. They built these shacks that they lived in. And I modeled all along my new railroad are these shanty towns and hobo camps, and it's the Great Depression. So things are a little bleak. But yeah, so that's what I had for you this evening. And I'll take any questions if you like, but hope you enjoyed that. And
Thank you, Tom. That's really great. Thanks a lot, educating us on what can be done in ON 30. And again, if we've got a way using ON 30 to get people into O scale, I think that's great. And it looks like it's working. We want to build on it. Part of O Scale Central's broadening our presence in the O scale community is to connect with narrow gauge modelers, and there's a bunch of them in ON 30. Thank you, Tom.
thank
Any
you.
questions before we move on and talk with Boyd? Sometimes we get questions after the formal meeting stops, and if Tom is available to do that, we can pick it up then and move on now.
David, can I make a comment?
Sure.
Some of you may or may not know, one of Tom's models took first place at the Pittsburgh Narrow Gauge Convention. And as I understand it, at that convention, the majority of the first place winners in all the categories were ON 30 models.
Yeah, that is correct. We had a little joke amongst ourselves that the ON 30 guys swept the narrow gauge convention. but thank you. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, our next guest is Boyd Rivas, and I want to thank Tom Hoback for connecting Boyd to O Scale Central. As we all know, brass models do not like paint, and so the ability to make paint stick to brass is an art, and finding painters who can work that magic is one of O Scale's perpetual hunts. I've never known a O scaler who was not looking for a painter, and I have not only heard of but participated in discussions in which people who have good painters try and protect them as if they were in the witness protection program. So what we have with Boyd is not only an excellent modeler, but someone who actually made income from painting brass models. I know he's got some techniques to share with us, some observations on the business of doing that, and maybe even some confessions. So he is a fairly recent convert to O scale 2 rail and a big fan of the scale. Boyd, welcome. Why don't you start by telling us briefly about your path to O scale, and then move on and talk to us about the work you've done as a professional painter. And I understand that he is not soliciting business. His story is he is retired, but at least perhaps you can educate us on what we should be looking for, and maybe educate other people who might be considering becoming a painter to think about before they jump in. Boyd, welcome.
Thanks for having me here. I painted for 35 years for Coachyard, Union Terminal Imports, other various dealers, and it was all HO. And I decided to retire. That's it. I don't want to paint anymore. And so at the original Whistle Stop in Pasadena, I saw an old KTM GS4, and I thought, wow, that would look really good as a mantelpiece. And some of the other painters there were egging me on. Yes, you need to buy O-Scale. Buy it, buy it, buy it. And so I ended up taking it with me and restoring it. And wow, it just really changed my mind on O-Scale. I wanted a mantelpiece, but then I wanted that mantelpiece to operate too. So once I installed sound and lighting and put it on a track, that was it. You know, it just changed me over. They're beautiful mantelpieces, like how you have your business cards behind your in your display cabinet. That's what I have in my office, and I wanted the same thing too. I wanted to be able to display models, because HO models displayed in a cabinet, they'll get lost. They're too tiny. Most people just don't really see all the details with them, especially on the interiors and what they what they can do. But yeah, once I switched over, and the reason I was retiring from painting is living in California, we're losing a lot of chemicals due to our air quality management district. They're like, well, you can't work with these chemicals anymore. So I saw a lot of stuff disappearing from the stores I used to buy it. I had to buy it out of state. And that's the thing. A lot of good chemicals have been taken away from us. Scale Coat was going out of business. And I'd shot with Scale Coat for years. And I'm like, what am I going to do now? Now it's a new learning curve, having to learn new paints. But I switched over to True Color. I never thought I'd be using True Color. I tried it out in the past, was never really happy with it. It gave me a gritty finish, but I didn't know you're supposed to mix True Color with their thinner. They, not use acetone or other lacquer thinners, but use their thinners for their paint products. And a little tiny bottle like this can go a long ways. I mean, it's almost 50% thinner that you add to these bottles, and it just grows. But what makes, if you spray True Color on brass, it just doesn't stick. Scale Coat, when I used to spray Scale Coat on models, it would stick, but it would rub off eventually. It needed really good primers. And what I've been telling people is to go along with SEM primer. This stuff will grab onto any brass, and it's just really good stuff.
One second, Boyd. I suspect that somebody has two sound sources on, and if you can mute one of them, that may do it. But the easiest way to do it is just, if you would, mute yourself unless you're actually asking a question. That way we don't find out how loud your dog barks or anything else like that as well. Thank you, Boyd. Sorry.
Yeah, so the SEM primer, it comes ready to spray. You don't have to thin this stuff out. A lot of times when you paint with other paints, like little tiny corners, for some reason, your paint will separate on corners or edges. It just doesn't wrap around an edge or inside a corner. This stuff, when you spray it, it pulls in everything, and it is very hard to remove. If you make a mistake, heaven forbid if you got to strip the model, because it's not friendly to strip. It really takes a lot of work to strip it. And so, but I can handle, you see the weight of most steam engines, they're running over 10 pounds or 8 pounds for a locomotive. So when you're picking up your locomotives, all that weight, you're actually rubbing off your paint. If it's some of the lacquer paints, it just depends a lot on the finishes. But I just found out that a lot of models had worn edges on them by handling them, and the paints weren't really sticking onto them. But this stuff, it's good. I really have to recommend that SEM primer. They did not pay me to say that. I'm just saying this stuff is great, you know. And it's an eye opener, because when you spray that SEM primer, you don't have to use that much of True Color. The True Color with super thinned out, spray that on the model, and it'll give you a really nice glossy finish. And it dries fast. I mean, I could paint an entire daylight passenger car in one day using True Color paints.
What's the name of the primer again, Boyd?
SEM.
Could you give the product number too, Boyd?
Product number is 39684. I've only been able to find it on eBay, like local hardware stores like Lowe's or Home Depot. They don't carry this stuff. It's expensive. It's around almost, well, it's over $50 a quart, you know, but it goes a long way.
Thank you.
Are you laying that down with a medium sized airbrush tip, and are you thinning it as well? Any preferred PSI that seems to work well?
It's so thin. It seems like it has like a thinner in there. It pours out like water. It's not thick. It's just, this stuff, when you shoot it out, I'm shooting it out maybe at like 20 PSI. I use a type 1 airbrush, a Pache airbrush. I'm not the 2-stroke. I just use simple airbrushes to spray. People go, well, why don't you use the double action airbrush? Because I'm not weathering with my airbrush. I'm applying paint. And I've always just adjusted my air pressure using, I have a regulator, so I'll adjust my air there. And that way my sprays are constant. I mean, automotive painters don't use double action. You know, people who just apply paint, unless you're going to be weathering or doing t-shirts, and then I suggest using a double action, but double action doesn't work for me. I've always just used single action. And, yeah, and they're just, the Pache, it's nothing special, no high-end, you know, airbrushes for me. I've been able to use those all right, just fine.
Wow, thank you for that. You're the first person I've ever heard say that, and I'm still rocking my ancient Pache H for 90% of everything I do. I own the double action, but like when you're painting, it's great. It's simple, it cleans. So thank you. You're validating me.
You're not weathering.
So just to comment, the SEM primer is available from Walmart for $42 for
Oh,
a quart.
wow.
And those ship it. I live in California. Those ship it to your local Walmart.
Oh, good. They also have it in black. This can is for gray, and I would suggest using the black primer for steam locomotives. It works out really good. I use the gray when applying colors, like if I'm painting a daylight baggage car, two-tone gray, where the gray primer brings out colors. If you have no colors besides black, then use the black primer. But the black primer is really good for underbodies, trucks, things that are going to get scratched. And there's nothing worse than getting something scratched and then the primer pops out from underneath. So I would suggest going with a dark primer.
Hey, Boyd, any thoughts on adhesion promoters, like Bulldog, before you lay down your primer coat?
Okay, you're painting on a nickel base, a nickel plated.
Well, it could be it could be plastic, or it could be brass, or it could be Zamek, like die cast.
Yeah, I have not sprayed SEM on plastic. I've only dealt with brass or even the metals. It works fine just spraying it right on.
But have you, before you put down the SEM primer, have you tried any adhesion promoter chemicals?
No.
Okay.
Never have. You know, and I come from, when I painted professionally, I was painting 10 passenger cars a week. So I was going through a lot. I mean, all the factory paint jobs, early factory paint jobs were coming out from my house, you know, so I was constantly painting a lot of passenger cars.
Yeah.
The passenger
The
car
SE
industry-
in SEM stands for self-etching. So it's
Yeah.
its own adhesion chemicals.
yes, it will
But,
grab on.
Boyd, what about cleanup? What
New
about
Zealand.
cleanup?
What was
Oh,
that?
just
about-
how
about
do you
cleanup?
what do you use to clean your locos before, or your
And
model?
okay, so I use a bed pan, a small like a bread pan to put the model in, and I'll use sometimes lacquer thinner or acetone to really get a lot of the stuff, and then I'll go back and then use lacquer thinner, you know, and just brush it all over the model to dissolve it. But in the past, I used to use aircraft paint remover. Now that stuff is gone. I mean, since you can't put it on pancakes anymore, they don't want you to use it. It's like, why are they taking away these good chemicals? They were perfect for the job. Now we have to do a lot more. We have to use a lot more chemical to remove the same amount of paint. And it's just, it just nonsense.
Thank
You
you.
know, that aircraft paint stripper was the best, you know, and that was another thing why I said, I need to hang it up. This is the worst time to be a painter. You know, I only paint undecorated. I just don't like trying to strip some other old paint. It's very hard. The varnish has never been a problem. You can put lacquer thinner, acetone, whatever, clean off a model. Just make sure it's completely off, you know, after you, you know, you pour your thing, just brush it off and just make sure that there's nothing left. Sometimes I have to go with the Q-tip dip with the acetone and rub off spaces, especially where you're going to be grabbing onto a model. You want to make sure that there's no residue there. Yeah.
Question for you. What you mentioned aircraft paint remover. And I
Yeah.
assume for those of us who are not in California, that we might be able to get this. Do you have a brand or a better description other than just aircraft paint remover?
It's been banned across the country. You can't find it anymore. I mean, I at the very end, we were finding these cans used to go for $20 a gallon. It was over $200 a gallon. It's so hard. I mean, you can't find it anymore.
Okay.
It's gone. They changed their recipe, and that new recipe it's horrible. It doesn't even work. You might as well put jelly on a model and see if it takes off. It's really bad. It doesn't work.
Boyd, what about SEM shows spray cans of the primer available as well? You prefer to
Well,
use the liquid in the brush?
I've used the spray cans. Yeah, like for O scale, you're dealing with a big underframe, you know, and I've shot it, and it lays down pretty good. It doesn't leave an orange peel texture, you know. But there's really not. I mean, the aerosol cans, you're only going to get so much out of it, and it's still expensive. You're better off with the little quart. It goes a long way if you have an airbrush. I mean, but I tried out, and I really liked the spray cans when I was lazy and I didn't want to go turn on the compressor. I could just go outside and just spray something real fast and run in, you know. But I used it. I liked it. You know, I just figured out it was just expensive for what it was, but it's worth it if you're not painting that much. If you're not, see, I still have a lot of O scale projects I'm working on for myself, so that's where I'll, you know, invest in the primers, the quart primers. Yeah.
Charlie
But it's good.
Tuzik is holding up his hand. Charlie, got a question?
Yeah, thank you. Boyd, nice speaking with you again. Hopefully you'll be at the March meet again this year.
No, I gotta go overseas, take my daughter to school.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'll be, yeah, I mean, as a dad, I don't get to pick out where I want to go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I
I always listen to you, but I do have a question. Moving from, and this is more of a global question,
Yeah.
moving from HO, are there any techniques that you were able to use in HO that you found out because of the size, that you found out that you're not able to do in O scale because it's so much larger, therefore visible? Is there any recommendations to newbies that maybe have made the same transition that you have?
You know, it was finding parts. You know, going back, you buy an older locomotive that was missing parts and trying to locate those parts. I mean, I was finding them from Precision Scale. They would have some, but there's a lot of people coming out with 3D printing, you know, where their parts are becoming available. That's the only thing. What I like about it, for N scale, I collected N scale and I had tons of N scale trains. And then when I bought HO, I didn't collect as many as I did in N scale. It just seems that the higher in scale I go, the less trains I collect. And now, like, I only have one mail train. That is my mail train has different colors in it, and my mail train, it's just, I concentrate on each car versus the whole train. Now everything is just focused because the car is so big. You pay more attention to each car, and eventually when you're done with your project, you're not pulling a 40-car mail train, you're pulling like a smaller 10-car mail train. It just seems like I have less locomotives in O scale, but I'm happy with them. It's almost like a live steamer. How many engines does a live steamer guy has? Maybe one or two at the most, you know? So I guess the bigger in size you go, you're collecting less, but you're paying more. It was worth it to switch. I really like it. And more people that when they come over and see it and hear them, you can actually, when the locomotive's going across my layout, I can hear creaking going on, just like the real locomotives. They're super heavy, and it's an eye opener. I really like it. You know.
Thank you.
Let me make a quick public service announcement. If you look at the bottom of your screen, this is particularly for folks who may not be as experienced with Zoom. If you look at the bottom of your screen, about 2/3 of the way over toward the left, there is a little icon and it says chat. And if you click on that, you will see a message board on the right-hand side. And that is where you can ask more specific questions or leave more specific information that you might not either want or be able to do in a voice message to the entire team. But we are getting some notes and comments on paint and painting techniques. Feel free to look at those. Feel free to go down to the bottom and post your own comments if you have questions. I would note that the chat room is cumulative, so we have some chats left over from the February program. But feel free to look at that. It's got some information in addition to what we're getting directly from Boyd, and feel free to add your own questions or comments.
Yeah,
okay.
Thanks. So switching over to O scale, it was worth it. I really concentrate on mantelpieces. My wife was asking me, hey, can you decorate your office with trains, just like how David has behind me? And I'm like, okay. And that's what started the ball rolling, coming out with different projects for, you know, to be displayed in my office. And I needed a place where I could run my locomotives. And so I joined up with an O scale group. But during COVID, it was very restricted of when we can get together. So I decided at that time, I'm going to build my own layout at home, a testing layout. All it is just it's in a 2-car garage, but it's only 11 by 17 feet wide. You know, it's not that big. It's just a circle where it has a tight 54-inch radius. And so that way I can make sure my models work. If they work over here, they're going to work on any modular group, unless the track's that bad on it. But over here, I can switch. I can do quite a bit, and it has room for expansion. If I open up my garage door, I'm going to build modules that attach to my layout, and I can go down my driveway. I have a 53-foot long driveway, and I can make my modules go down if I want to. So it has room for expansion. But I found out that I've had a layout before, and you get to a certain point where you don't run or use your layout as often as you did. They start becoming dust collectors. And so what I wanted, something that actually I can work on projects and enlarge it, but then put it away when I was done with it. It's not exposed to the elements or dust or, and then all my models fit inside a display case. Actually, right in front of me, there's a display case where I store all my models instead of keeping them on the layout. I found out that a dust can really cause a lot of problems for paintwork, just settling in a lot of cracks. It's hard to get off and hard to clean, especially if the layouts are really in bad or dirty.
Hey, Boyd, what about decals? Have you done much decal work when you're done painting a model?
That's all I do. Tons of decals. Now, I worked with microscale. I ran a lot of private projects with microscale, and I lost my contact person at microscale. I'm like 25 minutes away from microscale, so I can just go down there, and I know everybody, and I would run some projects, but I had to switch over to Circus City Decals. Mm-hmm. Matt's great. I love his artwork. He's a lot more reasonable. Every time I ran a decal production, it was close to $500 to run a decal production. And I would get 250 sheets, but I don't need 250 sheets for some O-scale project. So Matt at Circus City Decals, he does them for me, and it's really reasonable, a couple of $100 at the most, for most decals, and then you get 2 sheets. When I was painting or doing, you're working on an expensive model, $1,000, what's a couple of $100 more? Just do it right, get the right decals made. And so that's the route. I never try to skimp on the decals. I'll go all the way. Now, as for painting stripes, I've always painted all my stripes. I hate decal. Decaling for me drives me nuts. I'd rather paint my stripes, and it's just so much easier for me to paint as much as I can do paint. But yeah, the decals, sometimes decals are we've had to have custom decals made in Korea too. It's reverse decal technology. They act like decals, but there's no film. After you put the decal on the model, you let it dry, you come back with a hair dryer, and you hit the decal with the hair dryer, and then 30 minutes later, you come back and you peel off the protective film. And now you don't have outlines of film. And man, but those decals, that decal process is really cool, but it only has a shelf life of less than 6 months. They start to crack on you. The decals are just no good. It's just like when you're ready for production, ready to start applying, that's why when you buy models that are factory painted, you're not going to see, you're looking for decal film and you don't see it. Is it pad print? No, they're using reverse decal technology. And it's great, but the decals, we tried it out, and the decals don't last for more than 6 months before they start cracking.
What about dry transfer type decals? Is that a good compromise?
I was recently given a project I did a project for Tom Hoback. He gave me the decals, and the decals are dry transfer. A lot of these dry transfers were made years ago, and so they're falling apart already. The minute you put it in water, I mean, not in water, but you try pressing it on, and it just, not every bit of the letter goes on. So I just don't like to take chances, on that final stage. Yeah, part of the decal got on there, but there's cracks and there's bits of the decal that didn't make it on there, or the dry transfer that never made it. So, and then it's a pain to go there and take it off. So that's why I'll just have decals made. I'll just send whatever artwork up to Circus City Decals and have him print out the decals for me. And that, I'd rather go with decals.
I had the guy at All Out Graphics, who's in Vancouver, make me some dry transfers, and I was having adhesion problems like that. And one of the things he said was, you need to warm the model and the decal and the dry transfer. So you get your heat gun out on a low setting, just warm the model so it's warmer, and then you get much better, and get a burnishing tool. When I found I did that, even doing passenger car heralds, the long ones, actually worked much, much better. You got to really work at it.
Yeah, the only thing is, what some of the cars, like on cabooses where they're wooden cabooses, trying to get it in every crevice and stuff. You're just sitting there working forever. That's the hard thing. On a smooth surface, yeah, I would, use the dry transfers, but I don't know. I've just gotten so used to decals, and I'll go that route. It's just a little bit more to get them made, but it's worth it in the long run. And then you'll have extra decals just in case for other future projects.
Boyd, a question for you. Let us suppose you've obviously had a very successful career as a professional painter. If somebody were considering setting up a business as a professional painter, what advice would you give them? What thoughts do you have on something like that? Other than don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. To be a professional painter these days, the way I did it in batches. Like, you don't want to paint a steam engine and then paint a box car and then paint a passenger car. Try to stick with lots, like where I painted passenger cars. That's why it's almost like oh boy. It was easier for me to paint an entire passenger train. When you look at a whole train, you have one engine and then you may have 19 cars behind it. It was easier for me to paint the 19 cars. There's a lot of guys who just do not like painting passenger cars. But I thought, wow, it's perfect because you can run them all like an assembly line. 10 cars per week was nothing. And you're charging close to $400 a car. I was making a killing on it. It was a really good business to be in. But it's just, when I found out that I was doing steam engines, working on steam engines, they just took more time, unless I specialize in doing steam engines. But I have friends who specialize in steam engines, other ones who specialize in freight cars, and I guess I'm the only one part of my group that specializes in passenger cars. And I have no problems with passenger cars. I can whip those things out fast. But yeah. But I always stuck to the same colors. I painted in lots. So if I'm going to be painting Union Pacific yellow and gray, I would call up customers, let them, hey, send in all UP yellow and gray stuff. Because my shop, I don't want it to be a storage facility. I hear horror stories of, well, my painters had my stuff for 2 or 3 years. I don't want stuff in my shop for more than 4 to 5 months. I don't need it in here. It just takes some space. And when you see a pile of brass behind you that needs to be painted, it becomes overwhelming. It's better to see one project in there at a time and get it out. But I work, like when I'm painting 10 passenger cars, when those are inside the oven curing, I'm working on the next 10 and the next 10. And so at least every week, 10 cars are leaving out of my shop or whatever projects. But right now I'm down to, I have to have my head examined because I'm going, how did I paint 10 cars every week? And right now I'm painting maybe like 3 or 4 pieces, and it's like, wow, it's overwhelming. But back then you just work on something, and when it gets painted and it's drying, you're onto something else, the next project, or all the underbodies, you're painting all the underbodies at the same time. So it just goes a lot faster when you paint all the same colors. And the painting thing, the original Whistle Stop in Pasadena, they managed our painting schedules. And I would just tell them, hey, I'm going to be painting Pennsylvania, or I'm going to be painting, olive green passenger cars. So everything would just be set up already for me. Try not to have your painting areas where people are visiting you all the time. that it becomes a social event. You're not getting any work done. So my office was pretty much like the bat cave. Nobody came down. Fred Hill from the Whistle Stop never let anybody know where I was at. I was hidden for the longest time. That way I can get work done. But I have a nighttime job. I work for Disney, and so during the day when I had the days off, I just work on painting, and then just going to work so I can get myself out of the fumes and do something different. Because being in the shop all day long, it gets overwhelming. There's just a lot of work, but it's manageable. I tell people I wish I could train more painters. I've trained some people, and they just said no, they don't want to paint for anybody else. I'm like, I'm looking for somebody else that's gonna go. Let's take it and run. I wish that there were more painters.
So do we.
Yeah, they're hard to find.
Well, this is terrific. Listen, I am sensitive to the fact that these programs tend to go long, and I don't want to burden people with the long programs. But what we'll do, consistent with our prior practice, is we will complete the formal program and adjourn. And if Boyd and Tom can perhaps stay on for some informal questions a few minutes, that would be very helpful. There may be things that folks have that are very specific that wouldn't necessarily be shared with the entire audience, but if they can stay, that would be good. I really want to thank Boyd and Tom for their presentations. Obviously, there are many parts and pieces of O-Scale 2-Rail, and it's nice to have some different perspectives on them. And, everybody will go away with some additional options and some additional recommendations in terms of how things work, and a good interaction with Boyd and Tom as well. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to wind up the formal program. We can adjourn that, and then we'll keep it open for a while as long as people want to stay and ask questions. All right. We are in the process of lining up programs over the next month. I've been very blessed to have Greg Vigiano be working with me on this, and we're expecting a very busy agenda for the spring and summer. Watch for announcements on the website, and obviously in the same way that you get announcements this last month and before, you'll get one for next month as well. We will have a number of different subjects, but one of the things that we started several months ago and have not been able to come back to is the larger subject of estate planning. And as you know, time only goes in one direction. We've all looked at a train show where there'll be some poor lonely widow over in the corner with a set of tables of her late husband's trains without a clue of what they're worth or how to dispose of them. And we would all like to avoid that happening. And so we're going to venture back into the subject of estate planning in terms of how to plan for what is going to happen with your trains and your layout, and maybe some tips in terms of how that can work better. So we'll be talking about insurance, advanced planning, layout, disposition, and ultimately, obviously, selling our trains. It is a difficult topic, and it is one that I suppose many of us would rather talk about the latest conversion project than we would about what happens after we're gone, but it's one that's important to all of us. So we'll be taking it on probably in small doses, not completely replacing everything else that's on the agenda. Next month, our program takes place on Sunday, April 20th. So mark that down on your calendars. And we will have our usual mix of layout tours, clinics, interviews, and news at that time. And for those of you who have joined us for the first time, we hope that you get what you were looking for out of it. And for those of you who are coming back, we welcome your continual input. Again, this is renewal season and it's joining season. So oscalecentral.com will get you into a number of useful topics, including the way to join and become a member of OScale Central. I hope we see a lot of you in Chicago. I hope we see a lot of you in OScale West and at the other shows around the country. Come back and see us on April 20. The formal program is adjourned, but we will continue on with a Q&A period and a larger subject that we loosely call good and welfare, which means if anybody's got news or questions or whatever, now's your time to work. There are a number of people who I would particularly welcome and appreciate their participation. Phil Edholm is the Vice President of the NMRA for the Pacific region and has been very active with the new tracks. I say hello to Tony Custer. We got Cal Shearson coming to us all the way from New Zealand. And I know there are other people that I would want to say hello. We really appreciate everybody's participation. We are adjourned and we will continue.
David, one other thing. There was a mention in the chat that the April 20th date is on Easter. So we'll probably need to possibly have it the weekend, the Sunday after Easter.
We'll be back in touch. I've got, it's funny, we talked about that and went all the way through all of the dates for the year, and I missed the fact that this is Easter Sunday. We'll talk about it. We'll figure out something. Watch this space. All right. Thank you for that. Eric Peterson, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was the same point, the Easter Sunday. So.
Okay. All right. Well, watch this space. We may be back to you with an alternate date.
Yeah, right. This was a great session today. I learned more about painting in one afternoon than I learned in 50 years. So
thanks, man.
And you've already even renewed your membership. So we can't even say, you know, if you liked it that much, renew your membership. All right. Thank you. Okay, can we go? We are adjourned. We're off the record now. I'm no longer responsible if your wife comes and said, "Are you still on that Zoom call?"
Yeah.
But if people have questions, either for Tom Farrell about his ON30 presentation, or Boyd about his painting, now would be a good time to ask.
I'd like to interject something about ON30 that I represent Model Railroader, and we certainly don't ignore ON30, and so don't ignore us. If you've been reading Model Railroad Planning, which I edit, there's been a continuous stream of ON30 articles in Model Railroad Planning, and I'd like to keep that up. But I can't do it without the support of the ON30 community. So it's definitely a two-way street. You know, I can publish good material on ON30, but I need the support of the ON30 community to do it. So keep me in mind.
Hey, Tony, this is Tom Farrell. Yeah, I'd be happy to submit an article to you for Model Railroader. I was featured on the cover of ON30 Annual last year with the feature article in there, and it'd be wonderful to do an article for Model Railroader. If I put my email in the chat, could you email me?
Yes.
That'd be
For
great.
some reason, Tony, if for some reason you don't get that connection, I have Tom's contact information. Be happy to share it with you.
Okay.
There, I just posted it there. I did meet you once, Tony, at a show in Indianapolis briefly. I recognized you and had to shake your hand. Anyway.
Russell Courtenay, you showed something up on the screen and I don't know what it was. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, this is Model Railroad Planning 2025. Just picked it up here locally. A little place sells magazines around. I'm in Southwest Idaho, and really enjoy model railroad planning. You know, I've been planning a railroad for a long time, and at 59 years old, finally bought a house. So I'm just starting, but I want to do it, and I really appreciate model railroad planning for their ideas. And they have a great ON30 article here. Where is it at? Well, here we go. Dream layout in a spare bedroom. Great article.
Who wrote
kind
it? Who was the
I'm
author?
a typical modeler myself, but I love ON30 because it's so accessible. I've got, like most people, I got boxes of ON30 because it's just so much fun to play with, and share with friends. And you're not gonna be doing that with your ON3, So I like the compromise is a good one.
Russell, are you on the ON30 Railroading Facebook page?
Yes.
Terrific. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not doing a whole lot of modeling. I'm kind of concentrating right now on my 1764 O scale, Proto 45, party like it's 1939. But I've got it all O scale. I'm getting rid of all the smaller stuff. So that's my plan. But yeah, I really love it because it's really fun, accessible, inexpensive. And if you want to do prototypical stuff, hey, you can do that too. I've seen that too. I work at Sumter Valley Railroad here just down the way. I'm brakeman there, and so it's interesting when you work on the railroad, you notice things like these cab ride videos of model railroads. Wait, there's no switch stand. Which way is that switch pointing? Hey, do I need a single engineer? Because there's no switch stand. And so these little details really show up, and it's fascinating watching modelers add these details, and it just makes it so much better on their layouts. I love that, and the ON30 is a great space for that.
Yeah, David, this is Phil. If I can share something, this was an article that did for in the NMRA magazine. But this is kind of an interesting view of thinking about scale. We as human beings don't perceive scale in one dimension. We talk about it as 187th or 148th, which is a singular dimension. But the reality is human beings can't perceive things in one dimension. We only perceive things either 2 or 3 dimensions. So it turns out area is actually 2-dimensional, which means that as you go in scale and things half in size in 1 dimension, in 2 dimensions, it's a square function. So it's an exponential function. If you look at detail is actually volume. So volume is a cube dimension. So what this chart actually shows is going from Z to G. Z, obviously, you get the most area to model, i.e. the area. As you go from Z to N to HO to S and so on, the area gets smaller and smaller. Conversely, if you look at G, it has the maximum amount of detail because you can see the smallest parts. But the curve for that as you go down is actually a triple exponent. So it goes down, you notice an even steeper angle. And what's interesting is the two curves kind of meet at about S scale for standard gauge. But what I really argued in this article is that what's interesting about O narrow gauge, especially ON30, because as Tom talked about, the relatively smaller size of cars and stuff, is you can get the same area in many ways as HO and S in an O scale and get the detail. And I think that's why it appeals to so many modelers, is because you get this combination of being able to have a reasonable area with a reasonable scale. And if you actually look at it, these are the ratios. So if you look at, from, Z to G is almost 3,000 to 1 in terms of detail. So it kind of explains why you don't see a lot of detail in Z. So yeah, I think it's really interesting as we look at O. I mean, the reason we all like O is the detail that you get in the modeling and the heft of the models, et cetera. But unfortunately, if you're doing standard gauge, the area is incredibly small. Where if you go to narrow gauge, you can now have a much more manageable area. And of course, what's really interesting is that most of the narrow gauge actual railroads ran into areas that were much less, call it for lack of a better word, populated and therefore developed. So buildings are smaller. You want to fill up a full size, a 2 or 3 full size box cars. The industry to do that becomes huge. If you're looking at a small, ON30 box car, the industry can become much smaller and be still realistic. So I think it's a really interesting thought process about why narrow gauge makes so much sense, because it kind of gives you this almost ideal combination of area and detail scale, using those two together.
That particular
Thank you,
point,
Phil.
I have modeled in ON3 and Proto 48 and the end of the 19th century. And the Proto 48 boxcar is really almost twice the size of an aero gauge boxcar of the same scale. So that is a truth about the size issue. One note on the locomotives, the Bachmann Mogul, if you're interested, is very easily convertible to a full ON3 model. There's not much work to it. I've also seen one of the K27s. I'm not sure if all the models are done like this, but I would add the cautionary note of looking at it before you buy one, because the one I saw, because of the narrow of the wheelbase, it looked a little weird to me. But again, that may be taken care of with other models, but I would be careful when I buy one of those. Thank you.
Thank you. And I note that Andrew's repurposed ON3 layout is featured in this year's, I always get them confused, Great Model Railroads, right? Is that right,
Yes,
Andrew?
it is, and I have been contacted to redo an article, the same article basically, to redo it and redo pictures for the O scale. I guess coming up. I've finished the article and I'm just capturing the pictures today.
Terrific.
Submitted it.
Thank you. I thought when Phil put up that graph, I was reminded of the graph that the late John Armstrong used to use in his dinner speeches at NMRA conventions. It was a graph in which one axis is the size of the layout and the other axis is the likelihood of divorce. So
P sub D.
That's right.
Givens and druthers. Yeah.
All right.
think
Further
that
questions or comments, either about Tom and Boyd, or
I got a
Ralph?
couple for Boyd. Boyd, back to decals. Do you do anything special to prepare the surface for the decal? And what do you typically like to use as a clear coat or a sealer?
Okay. Yes, the clear coats, to really do decals right, you have to put a gloss coat. It has to be a gloss coat. No matter, I mean, even if your paintwork is glossy, put a clear gloss coat. And then you apply your decal on there and then put another clear gloss coat over it. The second gloss coat is going to hide water spots and a lot of the film. Like when I would do like Santa Fe equipment, it's over a nickel plated product. And so to not see the reflection of the decal, I would always put a really thick gloss coat over the model, put the Santa Fe logo on the letterboard, and come back and put another thick gloss coat over it. And then I would seal it with a satin. I use, let me grab this real fast so you can see what I use for a finish.
This whole thing with taking your layout down the driveway, we got to talk more about that. I haven't heard that one before.
Oh yeah,
only works in great weather.
My drive is 4 miles long. Got plenty of room for it.
Who was that?
My driveway is a quarter mile long. You got plenty of room for an outdoor
Wow.
layout.
Yeah.
What you got for us, Boyd?
So I used Deft. I use this for my final clear coat. And Deft, it's a semi-gloss satin finish, and it's lacquer. Let me put this right there. Can you guys see that? Right there. And this stuff is what I used to use testers or use some of the other paint manufacturers' finishes, but they tend to rub off, when handling models. This stuff, it's furniture finish. You put it in a bottle and you thin it with lacquer thinner, and to where it comes out, when you spray it on a model, it dries hard, very hard finish, where I have no problems picking up my models. You can go there and eat French fries, and touch your models and then come back and wipe it off. It's just, this finish is really good. We use it at work on a lot of high traffic areas, and it's durable. It's a very durable finish.
And what do you use the gloss coat for the decals? What product is
the gloss coat? I'll use True Color, the gloss coat from True Color.
Okay.
I just thin it out and just make sure that, because whatever paint, if you're using True Color paint, I would use True Color gloss to avoid cracking or to avoid the chemicals doing weird things. If I'm using Scale Coat, then I use, their glosses and stuff, but I always just put like a really wet finish, low PSI, a lot of thinner in there. And I always tell people, shake your bottles and open them up and look for little tiny bubbles. You want to see a lot of bubbles. That means that your mixture is set right and you're ready to start spraying. A lot of bottles, when you get them, you can shake them and you open it up and you'll maybe 1 or 2 bubbles. Make sure that there's a lot of bubbles in there after you put your thinner in there. But just do it little by little and just spray, and just to see how it comes out on your surfaces. I have metal plates that I'll spray on and then tilt it at an angle towards light to see if I can see orange peel. I just want to make sure it's laying down flat. And but every time I use True Color gloss, I like it. It really handles, and then you're able to decal it, within an hour. It holds up pretty good. But remember the second coat. I can always tell when people put on decals without, layering them in between a gloss coat. They should be sandwiched between a gloss coat.
Thank you very much.
Your final, just seal it off with the Deft finish, the lacquer-based finish. It holds on really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
I've got a question for Tom.
Yeah.
Tom, I noticed that your MMI locomotives were not carrying Rio Grande on them anymore. Do you just not worry about that and strip it off, or do you create new tenders so you don't have to deal with that?
Well, we don't, we're not so concerned with, I have a fictitious railroad, the Rustic Buff and Old Gothic. So I remove all these, some of these locomotives from Bachman come across with all kinds of road names, Pennsylvania, Rio Grande, move that. And then I decal it with the Rustic Buff and Old Gothic. And sometimes I convert the tenders to an oil burner, does that answer the question? I don't know.
I have the MMIs too. I have 2 of them and they're beautiful. And I just real nervous about stripping the tenders just to get my Salmon River Railway on there.
Never bothers me.
I guess that's the attitude I need to take up with it.
I just strip them off, repaint them. It's not an issue for me, really. I did pick up some good tips on painting this evening. I struggled for years with these Pache airbrushes with double action. I always felt guilty to use the simpler one, but I'm gonna just toss those double actions. And and I got a new lead on that primer, so this is very beneficial for me. And I think I have one of the world's largest collections of Floquil still, but I hate to use that paint because it's poison, but I'm going to try the True Colors. And I picked up a lot of things this evening. I don't have any qualms about stripping a locomotive. There's all kinds of ways to do it. Brake fluid. Sometimes you can burnish it. There's lots of ways that take decals or paint off a locomotive. Boyd, do you want to share anything that you know about that?
Yeah, it's not like the good old days when you would just brush on that aircraft paint stripper. You could just brush it on and immediately just wipe it off.
Yeah, but now what do you use now?
You have to, now, to be quite honest, I have half a can left, 1 gallon left. I'm on my final, so I try not to strip anything if I can.
Things that work are you can use alcohol sometimes in an eraser. You can use brake fluid. I hear people use. You can use. There's water soluble brush cleaners that you can get at Lowe's, at Home Depot, and we have Menards here in the Midwest. There's all kinds of ways to do that without destroying, if it's a plastic locomotive, melting the plastic. Things you don't want to use, on a plastic, you probably want to be careful with lacquer thinner, for example.
Yeah.
But or acetone, I don't think I would use that either. You can get them off without destroying the model, if that's your question,
Yeah, I've used brake fluid on plastic, and it's gotten to the point where it makes the plastic brittle.
Yeah.
It was kind of brittle afterwards. I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I left a fingerprint on an N-scale locomotive I used brake thinner on, so.
I've never used brake thinner. That's like a folklore within the model railroading world. I'd be reluctant. That sounds like a carcinogen as well. I would try these water-soluble brush cleaners and alcohol, which are relatively harmless, and wear gloves. I have really taken a stance against these chlorinated solvents and the stuff that you're using, Boyd. You got to be careful with these. I just, a lot of you, maybe a half a dozen, I beat lymphoma a year ago, and they don't really know the cause, but I get the feeling playing around with all this bullshit is what caused it. So be careful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was just really thick gloves. I mean, I remember the first time I used it, my gloves were not thick and it just started eating the gloves. And I'm like, oh man, it really stung. So I made sure I had big gloves.
But you got to make sure you wear a mask, and you got to wear not a real mask, not one of these. You got to wear a carbon filtered mask. And you really got to go. Believe me, I was fortunate. I beat lymphoma, and I won't go into it, but you don't want to do what I had to do. Yeah.
Look for a chemical rating on the gloves. Standard gloves may not have a chemical rating on them, and you want to look for that.
The one comment you want to do is do a test on something before you take it on the side of your locomotive. Ruin it.
The safest thing is just to mail everything to Boyd.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, tell you what, I'd be glad to dispose of the local paints for you.
Agreed with that.
Make it somebody else's problem. That's the
just shipping out.
Yeah, I can share for plastic models. I haven't used anything other than Pine Sol for the last 20 years. I used to use brake fluid, and I like the brake fluid actually, but I remember there was, I think it was A-line or something. I lost a shell on that once it got embrittled. And I switched over to Pine Sol, which is very easy to work with, and just put it in a cake tin. It's just slower, so I'll put it out in the shop and submerge something in Pine Sol for a day, check it, and hit it with a toothbrush. If it hasn't softened up, leave it go for another day. If I don't want my shop smelling like pine sol, I'll put some saran wrap over the top. But I've never had to wait longer than 2 or 3 days for any plastic model to have pine sol lift off the paint. I wouldn't use it for brass. I'd use something more aggressive, but I have never had a plastic issue using the pine sol, and it's cheap, and you can get a big bottle of it at Walmart.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Just be cautious.
Yeah, I was using an ultrasonic tank. That's what I used. In the past, I used an ultrasonic tank to put my models in, and the vibration, or it would just break down the paint pretty fast too. I was, believe me, I was trying all these different ways with brake fluid and an ultrasonic tank to just break down the paint, and it would, but it would just take a long time, maybe a couple of days. I was used to seconds to removing paint.
Well, there's all kinds of stuff that would take it off. You just got to be careful. It's bad news. That's why I don't use those flocals anymore, even though I have a great collection.
Yeah.
I think Kevin Maker would like to talk about that collection of Floquil.
I know. He's a friend of mine. I talk to him once a week.
Especially Engine Black.
Yeah.
And Star Red.
Yeah, that's a pretty rare one. So.
One thing I've always done for preparing brass to paint is to clean it with Comet Cleanser and a toothbrush. And back in the 70s, there was a big advantage of the Korean models. All of the detail parts would fall off of them, and it was always very difficult to resolder them back after you've painted your model.
Yeah.
When you scrub it with the toothbrush, that knocks all the loose parts off, so you can solder them before you paint it back and get it painted again.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way to find out the cold solder joints, isn't it?
It is.
I have a pretty large brass HO collection. I bet you I have 75 engines.
I used to before I changed to O scale.
They're just on the wall now. With my N scale, I got 90 of them.
All right, guys, it's 6 o'clock. And
All right.
unless anybody else has a burning question or comment, I think it's probably time to sign off and thank everybody for your participation, especially thanks to Boyd and to Tom for their presentations. But this is one where we all learn from each other, so that's really great. I think from a default point of view, we're probably going to be here on the 27th rather than the 20th of April, but we'll let you know. So thank you all.
See y'all in Chicago.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
And we got 2 of us here from Idaho for once.
Yeah. Well, we get Ross now and then too.
Yeah, there you go. There's more than that, but those are the main 3, huh?
Oh, trouble is they're Proto 48, so I'm still a light scaler. Hey, Dave, sorry about the cell phone. I lost my picture on the computer and tried to reset it, and that's how the cell phone ended up talking to the computer.
We're good. No, it's no problem. We just need to sort of work around that stuff. But that's good. Thank you all. I'm going to sign everybody off. Bye-bye.
Thank you.